disappeared on there, leaving 51 units allowed at the Crossroad property. The developer was not able to develop in the last 6, 8, 10 years, economic conditions being what they were. Another developer is now come in, he's taken over the project, and in April of this year, they announced their intentions here at the board, to the board in public session, talking about how that they were going to develop it as a workforce housing development, and that they were alerting us to that. They were seeking funds from the state to support that, and then in September, and they got that from the state. In September, they came back to us and they asked if they could change the units from the townhouses, which were originally proposed, to an apartment flat kind of arrangement. This board looked kindly at that, investigated the product, and was satisfied with what they're doing. And since the initial agreement that allowed for these buildings back in 2006 was an agreement together with the school board, which is unusual for a construction process, this board believed that the school board should be, well, they had to be brought in. They were part of the agreement. They had to be a part of any amendments to it. And so we alerted the school board about that possibility. The school board, or at least members of the school board, have seen fit to bring that to the public before the school board officially acted. And there's been a lot of, I understand, social media talk over the weekend about this. And so we are, in a sense, breaking our executive privilege here. It's already been, the school district seems to have allowed that to happen. And so we are discussing it now and allowing you, taking questions if you have them from you on this issue. One other thing to note in this whole thing is the only thing that's being asked for to amend the original agreement is to change from the townhouse facility to an apartment facility. There's nothing about the agreement that references any kind of economic conditions, any kind of rental issues, any kind of ownership issues. The development of any kind of property is totally up to the developer when it comes to how they finance it, how they rent it, how they manage it, and that's not really on the table, so to speak. That being said, are there any public comments or questions? I'll start over here. If you give your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Catherine Peretti, P-A-R-E-T-T-I, 218 Deerfield Way, Turnberry Farms. Can you explain workforce housing as opposed to low-income housing, subsidized housing, things like that?
Okay. Workforce housing. Okay.
So workforce housing, the IRS code has a piece in it where it allows for tax credits for developers that develop housing priced to the workforce. So the way it was explained is they take the median income of the community in which they're developing, and then they charge the workers 60% of that median income. They have, well, not charge them, they have to meet that threshold, 60% of the median income, and then the rest is subsidized by tax credits.
Okay, when you say workers, are you talking about the people who actually work on the construction?
No, the people that would be renting the facilities.
Okay, because that sounds like,
It's targeted.
which what you were saying did apply to me, did apply to the people who are renting.
Yes.
Okay, so
criteria that they have to meet.
So it is low-income housing?
No.
Yes.
Not.
Yes. It is. It is low-income.
Okay, before we can start arguing terms.
No, I don't want to argue, but
I'm saying
I am familiar with this.
I want to make clear, though, that we have no authority to dictate to a developer how they manage their property.
How they manage the
How
property.
they
But can the
authorize
citizens, can
There is
we
no-
say, can it be used for senior citizen housing, low-income housing? Instead of putting maybe an undue tax burden on us already.
I'll just
Okay.
say, make it clear many times, we cannot dictate how a private developer develops their property. We can only tell them what the size of the buildings are, how many units they can have, how far they're set back from property lines, they have a certain safety standard, but we can't dictate their business model. Anybody in the township could sell their home as, as a low-income house. They can rent it out at any rate they wish.
They were going to, though, do an age-restricted community on the Pine Forge, which was, that's what it says in the letter. It says age-restricted.
That was from 10 years ago.
No.
I'm sorry.
Is this letter that was on? from 10 years ago?
Ms. Peretti, as part of the curative amendments settlement agreement that has now been approved by the court as a court order, and that was a 2006 agreement. The agreement that was reached and now approved by the court was that 51 of the townhouse units at Crossroads were not restricted to age. The 54 or 53 at Pine Ford were age restricted.
Right.
So as of the court order today, this could be 51 rental units of townhomes. If the developer chose to make them age restricted, the developer is entitled to do that. The township, under the order now, can't force it to be age restricted.
So there's no, so it's a done deal.
As of 2006, the court
It
approved.
was a done deal.
It was a done deal for 10 years, yes.
And also, even if we were starting this from scratch, and somebody came in today and they had 50 acres of land they wanted to develop, we have no authority to tell them, is it going to be age restricted, is it going to be income regulated? We have no authority in that whatsoever. It just has to be a structure that satisfies our ordinances.
And
Correct?
the ordinances, like, is there some sort of mandate or something that we have to have a certain?
Nobody can economically redline their community. They can't do it, it's not allowed.
Okay.
In fact, we are obligated to provide a certain level of density within the community. We are part of the Grand Regional Plan right now, which has those densities potentially focused into the core of Pottstown. But there are legal standards that suggest your community as a whole needs to allow for all sorts of densities and therefore.
Legal
potentially economic
standards by whom? The county, the state?
Your question?
Legal standards by whom? The
State and
county?
federal.
State and federal.
Right, they dictate fair housing,
Fair housing
It's
act.
a fair housing.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to provide a little bit of legal definition with respect to workforce housing, just to elaborate on what the manager said. And I'm reading here from the government. Workforce housing is generally understood to mean affordable housing for households with earned income that is insufficient to secure quality housing in reasonable proximity to the workplace. Workforce housing implies an altered or expanded understanding of affordable housing. Workforce housing is commonly targeted at quote-unquote essential workers in a community, i.e. police officers, firemen, teachers, nurses, and medical personnel. Some communities define essential more broadly to include service workers, etc. Workforce housing may be targeted more generally at certain income levels regardless of type of employment, with definitions ranging from 50 to 100% of area median income. I just wanted to provide that definition.
Okay, so they will then make sure that it will be to the guidelines of workforce housing. We all know how subsidized housing is working out for Pottstown.
The proposed rentals are between $725 and $950 for everything from a 2-bedroom to a 3-bedroom unit. They estimate that the incomes needed for this are between $30,000 and $40,000.
And specifically, Mr. President, the operations of this development will be unsubsidized. That is, the project is neither public housing nor project-based Section 8. Rather, the community will be considered workforce housing, meaning that income of occupants will not exceed the established limits set forth, etc., and based on the definition that I also
I think we're all just concerned about our taxes going up and our property values going down.
Well, again, just appreciate it, but to repeat, we have no authority, no community has any authority to dictate this. You don't. If a developer with money comes in and wants to develop that way, as long as they abide by all of our structural standards, they can do it. You can build a house and you can rent it to somebody. You can build a house and you can live in it. You can build a house and knock it down. It's all up to private property owners to decide what they do. Did you want to?
I was just gonna say, this development, if and when it's built, will be taxable, it won't be tax exempt, so again, to the extent there will be revenue generated from it, I understand your concern.
You know what I'm gonna say.
I know what you're gonna say, actually, I'm just saying, it's not an exempt project, just so you're aware.
Exactly, but, and, you know, it's rent and the owner pays the taxes on it, so the rents go up, but, you know, it's like, what kind of tax revenue are you gonna get from that? Is it gonna be enough to, is it gonna be too much of an influx in the school system? You know, that's an issue, and that's an issue for Pottstown. You know, too much rental housing, too many kids in the school system, not enough of a tax base to build, you know, to support the school system. You know, I don't want that flowing over to here, because I left Pottstown for that reason.
Ultimately, I would say all of our angst over this issue really comes down to economies for everybody. And it's something that's not in the school board's control, it's not the township's control, it's in the state's control. And the state's failure to educate their kids equally across the state is the problem. If there was adequate funding coming from the deep pockets that the state can access, as opposed to just one little community, then we wouldn't be struggling with this. We wouldn't be fighting each other.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. We wouldn't be fighting each other over the scraps that we get, from the state, who are the ones that should be responsible.
Understood. So this is kind of like a Governor Wolf issue of, we're just giving out money to,
I'm just saying, in general, our state does not equitably fund schooling evenly throughout the state. They don't.
well, no, I know that. It is according to, I understand that.
That's the problem. And that's why we have neighbors against neighbors, and that's why we have, people thinking we're going to fix everything by keeping the people that are less economically advantaged away from us, and redlining our communities against, that kind of thing.
I mean, because we don't want to sound like an angry mob that doesn't want any, it's just that our taxes are high, our water bills are ridiculous, and our property values are going down. And I don't want, just give me a fair warning before things go out of control so I can,
Well,
Go.
if you look at the history of Pottsgrove and that way we managed the township over these last 15, 20 years, in spite of the economic collapse our country went through, we did very well.
we did, and we want to make sure it keeps.
Okay, well, still saying.
That's our point.
I think
Okay,
Mr.
I'm done.
Leach was next in the front.
Oh, it's a name and address, right?
My name is Albert Leach, 1466 Sweetwater Way, up in Pottsgrove. Now, I'm also one of the members of the school board, the director, so obviously I'm going to be the one that's going to be voting on the flats versus the townhouses. Two things. One, as a resident, I wanted to ask you a question, as in, you said it repeatedly, as into, you as the commissioners have no authority on saying what a builder or developer does with a particular area. All right, you've said that multiple, as it relates to how they build and structure. Now, my question is, and again, this is as a resident, I'll ask my question to the school board in a second. My question as a resident is, I do see other areas having variances, ordinance, or whatever you might call it, where they don't allow a certain amount of townhomes, or they don't allow, they have to have 1 acre per housing and stuff like that. Do we have those same ordinances in force, and how come they don't take it first when it comes to this particular event?
We definitely have zoning ordinance that allow certain densities in certain parts of the township, absolutely.
Yes, we do have zoning districts that allow for different housing types, minimum lot sizes. We have R80, which is basically 2 acre zoning in much of the township. What we're looking at in this particular case, based on this particular tract, was a legal challenge that occurred probably back in 2004 or 2005.
2002.
I know it's been a while before a lot of the folks were here at this table, but what was challenged by the developer was the sufficiency and adequacy of the township zoning ordinance with respect to its providing for higher density housing, which is what you're suggesting. So ultimately, as a result of an agreement, curative amendment process after hearing, the governing body at the time in 2006, the school board in 2006, agreed that we would enter this stipulation to permit the limited housing we're talking about. So in the sense, this curative amendment overrides whatever zoning is in place and ties this development to this parcel. But to answer your question, the rest of the township at this point is zoned. There are higher density areas, there are lower density areas, and we've not been challenged since 2002. So,
All right, so to continue on my thing, I actually have the agreement, right? And it started in 2002 and obviously was settled in 2006. My question then is going to be, as in you're saying it's this particular area, and it was part of the settlement. The settlement was with renovations, which was owned by a Richard Mungie. So my question would be, being the fact that it's 10 years old, it's no longer owned or being developed by Richard Mungie or the renovation project, why does anybody coming in also get the same agreement as you guys put in here, which you guys put no time stipulation or anything in here? He could do virtually whatever he wanted. You guys put in here nothing, which was kind of odd, but hey, that's on there. But my question would be, like I said, is in why 10 years later, under a different developer, does the zoning have to stay? Does it stay forever? Does it stay with anybody you want?
Under the agreement, I believe it stays with the property, and there, as you point out, there's no time frame associated with that. I can tell you, back in 2006, I think everybody thought that project, as well as Pine Ford, was going to be developed very quickly. And the market fell out in 2007, 2008, and all development came to a standstill. But to answer your question directly, it runs with that property that's known as Crossroads, that piece on Moyer Road.
So in essence, it was the commission at the time, or the lawyers at the time, that made mistakes and didn't put timeframes in here or anything like that.
Well, I don't know that the developer would have agreed to any timeframes anyhow, sir. I mean, again, this was negotiated based upon the parties that existed back in 2006. And I'm not sure any developer would want timeframes in such an agreement to limit their ability to develop property. So again, we're
7 years, 8 years.
The law of the state over the last 5, 6, 7 years has required extensions of development rights.
Yeah, there's been a Permanent Extension Act in place since 2008 that essentially has established or allowed development to basically be put on hold. Normally under the MPC, which governs the development, there's a 5-year window from an approved project to protect from zoning changes. The state legislature saw fit to extend that another 8 years through legislation. So even if there were time limits in that agreement, I suspect the Permanent Extension Act would have kicked that up as well. But again, that's
Here or there. All right, now the question I ask him as the school board director, because I'm the one who's going to have to make the decision. You have to explain to me, Elwood, I got your letter in regards to saying that the commission as a whole discussed the opportunity for the changing them from townhouses to apartments, flats per se, right? And my question is going to be, as in hear what you said, everybody here agrees that that's the better option. You're going to have to explain to me why that's the better option.
I just want to say, that as being 1 out of 5, I don't know that necessarily, first of all, that the letter that the president wrote necessarily says that we agree that it was the quote-unquote better option. I think what we talked about was the existing legal agreement, 1, and 2, that at least in my individual mind, I don't want to micromanage a developer. If the developer feels that the flat concept is the one that is more marketable, that is going to get tenants, that is not going to sit idle and empty, which we've had in Coddington View for years where I live. Since 2006, we're finally selling the rest of those houses in that development. I, now and into the future, have no intention to micromanage a developer. If they're risking their money and they think that's the more marketable concept, then who am I to tell them that it needs to be townhouses?
Ask you the question before I ask everybody else. Right? You're saying that your opinion, you don't want to micromanage the developer.
Correct.
Right? My question is, who's more important in your eyes, the community that elected you or the developer that's coming in?
The community that elected me.
If the community doesn't want rentals, why would you prefer
The town of
rental?
would be rentals as well.
It's all.
Okay, it's rental, it's all rental, it's townhouse, but I would expect, and I could be totally wrong, but I would expect that townhomes generally would charge more than an apartment.
It's still going to be controlled at those certain income limits, remember?
Right. And also, I would say in prospective buyers coming into an area, having an apartment complex is much different than having townhome complexes. Do you disagree?
No, well, yes, I mean, it's a marketability issue.
Now, that's a marketability
The
issue. I'm asking you
of
which is
townhouse-
better.
The issue of townhouse versus apartment is, what I said in the letter was, it was a preferable configuration for these units and facilitate a more aesthetic and convenient layout. These apartments lay out on the property better than just the typical row houses. It presents an opportunity for better use of land, a more aesthetic, whatever. And as it said here, that's what the developer would prefer. He runs, and they have 30, 40 different units across the Delaware Valley. Some are townhouse, some are apartment. They do both. Here, he wanted to do this. And it has nothing to do with whether or not it's a rental property or not. That's a given. Now, there are other people that have been jump it up in here, so I'd like to let other people in. Man in the back, you had your hand up a couple times. And your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Maria Barone, and I live at 1386 Juniper Street in Turnberry Farms. One, I just wanted to acknowledge that, you guys to acknowledge that I have a petition going on right now with the community. I've already had over 100 people sign it so far since Friday. In speaking about your curative amendment, you said that it started in 2002, and then the resolution was in 2006. During your, that time frame, your code says that you have to have a community analysis, impact on the community. I want to see how can I obtain that analysis. Since it's 10 years old now, have you done another community analysis with it being 10 years older, having a difference of types of apartments versus townhouses? Have you consulted with the police chief to see about the increase of crime? Because more people that you have coming to the community, don't make a face. I'm a police officer, okay, so I do know that crime does increase with these types of communities, okay? So that's an expert opinion. Have you consulted with the police chief? Are you going to fund the police department more? Because they're already underfunded. I know that they just received a donation of a car from another township with probably over 200,000 miles. So what are you going to do to ensure that our safety is intact? And have you done those things? Had a new report, a new analysis?
Okay, I'll say it the easy way first and let my solicitor fill in the details. Again, it comes down to an agreement that's in place. Whatever agreement concerning how it was built, studies done, whatever, that's done. However, this particular property, the plan needs to go through the planning commission again when it comes to the apartments. It'll go through a typical planning process. And in the planning process, if these questions are raised and pertinent, it becomes part of the planning process. And so if there is a traffic study that needs to demonstrate that 51 apartment dwellers living on Route 100 are going to impact traffic horribly, that'll be part of the study. If they talk about many of the things that you mentioned will be part of the analysis done through the planning process that will come.
So I'm raising those issues. Is there a specific way for me to raise the issue officially, or is this the place?
Yeah, to the extent there's an issue to be raised, this is the place.
Okay, so you're going to do an analysis with crime, making sure that there's no increase in crime?
We're not.
If there's a perspective of increase in crime, you're going to mitigate that. Also, I wanted to, just before I forget, if you have the large consistency of people here telling you they don't want this townhome community, if you get a petition that has more than 50% of your people, what are you going to do about that?
Follow the law.
And we have a court order in place since 2006 that dictates that this property can be developed for 51 units. Now, again, I know you don't like that answer, but unfortunately, 10 years ago, the school district and the township agreed that this was the best way to resolve a challenge that could have brought 300-some units to the community.
You made a resolution, you made a settlement, you didn't actually have a court find that it needed to be done, correct?
The parties, all parties to the proceeding, and certainly anyone else could have joined the curative amendment that had standing at the time to challenge what was going on. All parties agreed to settle it by agreement and allow the court to enter an order. You are correct, the court didn't make a finding, but that still has the same force and effect of an order of the Court of Common Pleas that was never appealed.
And if you choose not to go by the agreement, what will be the next step?
We would, the developer would file an action for contempt for failing to comply with the court order. So the township would be in
It's not the same
litigation.
type of property. Like the gentleman in the front row said, it's different terms, there's different things going in there.
Well, potentially, but again, the developer could certainly just say, we're just going to build the townhouses. So again, I don't want to predict what's going to happen, but certainly right now, 51 units are permitted to be built on that property. Presently, the form is townhouses. Again, this was a request by the developer to alter the form of the unit. That's where we are.
And I'm going to jump in and let somebody else here for a second. But I would like to address this private developer managing it as a whole will make it more difficult to move into this community than buying and renting any other house in the community. They have criminal background checks that they must pass. They have a credit check which they must pass. They must obtain written information, income verification from their employer, and they must have proof of citizenship. Now, all those things and other things on here are much more than a public community could ask for. The private owner bringing people into his private development is allowed to do that, and they do. And so as far as criminality and income and so forth goes, they probably have they do. They are more stringent than anybody that just buys a house in the community. Other people that show, I think, yeah, you got there.
Hi, my name is John Raff. I reside at 1275 Waitsfire Circle in Upper Pottsgrove. My question is, I understand your hands are tied. It's a done deal. I mean, you have to abide by the law. But my question is, every day on my way to work, I drive past rolling hills. And when I first moved up here, we were looking at a house in Lower. And we didn't buy there because of that. We came to Upper. So my question is, does the township, I know you just explained it's a professional property management developer, but if things start to go array, like it starts looking like crap, does the township have the authority to step in and say, listen, you've got to keep this up to par so it doesn't affect our property value, where it looks decent? I mean, that's my concern, because when I drive by Rolling Hills, the siding's falling off. There's like 4 different colors of siding on the buildings, and it just looks terrible.
Yes, we visited other properties these people build and manage. Mr. Miller and Mr. Beal both went out. Would you like to address the property management aspect of it?
This commissioner is in his last term. Before that, I was on the planning commission for 18 years. This commissioner feels the way you do. I'm very concerned about Upper Pottsgrove Township. If you look around, we probably have more open space, trails, trees, grass. You drive around, you'll see what we've done to kind of keep the same feeling as to why you bought here in the first place. That's why I bought here 40 years ago. I'm very concerned about this. So I said to the dealer, I said, the 2 guys on the planning commission, get your ass in my car. We're going to go out and research this company. I'm going to tell you a little story. One of the units we went to, I popped out of the car, and I said to the dealer, I'll be right back. If anybody wants to move my car, you move. We went in the front door, which it was a vestibule, instead. I thought I could just go from front door to inside door. The inside door was locked. I rang the bell. The lady came out. She said, can I help you? I said, I'd like a little more insight on how you operate this facility. She said, well, I'll get you some information. But I'm sorry, sir, you have to stay right here. You're not permitted past this door. So I thought, pretty good security. Now, meanwhile, I saw them addressing tables out on a veranda. So I thought I'd go out and meet some of the people that reside there. Wasn't what I thought I would find. These were decent, hard-working people, okay? They were all contributing to this manicured facility. And how about it, John? Manicured. We drove around that facility 2 or 3 times to try and find something that we could come back and report. Man, they don't even hide their trash cans. They do. The point I'm trying to make is, originally, when I was on the planning commission and I saw what we were going to see built out there, I thought, United States Army's coming to Upper Pottsgrove Township. What do I mean by that? Ugly building. Okay? So recently, I went off the planning commission after all these years and let some other guys take the reins. But I was privy to this development that was coming our way. Flags went up, big concern on the part of Commissioner Miller. Because I understand what has happened to Pottstown, and we all know what Norristown's done to Pottstown. I don't want to see that happen up here. So our manager and Elwood had me come in because they know I'm very outspoken about issues concerning this township. What I saw, sir, was something beautiful. I said, is this pie in the sky, or is this something that's really coming Upper Pottsgrove? This is it. This is actually a photograph of another area that they did. Wow, I said. How are we going to communicate this to the populace? Make them understand and aware that this might not be as bad as we all think. Now, like my colleagues addressed up here, all those people that are coming to those facilities have in part an economic value sustained there. It's not like someone's dumping out of the sky people that can't afford a bicycle. Okay? It will be up because a lot of us here, particularly myself, will be leaving Commissioner base, Planning Commission base, and we hope that those that sit in these chairs understand what indeed we did here in decision making. It isn't easy. You were right, sir, what you said. We have to follow the law, and it is easy to sit in these chairs. Okay. So you either listen to what I'm saying, and I'm saying it honestly to you, looking you right in the eye, sir, that this is probably the best that you're ever going to see. Now let's talk about manicuring bushes, cutting grass. I ride with our tax collector, Michelle Reddy. We drive around, and even some of the developments we have now, grass is that high. Guess who has to cut that? This township. Then there's a lien on that house. And guess what? Months ago, in driving around and seeing the same houses, the people were there. Now they're not there. Did anybody pick up the phone and say we're leaving? No, they just disappear. Where did they go? We don't know. It's a shame. We all know what we're faced in our country right now. So, have you seen the picture of the facility?
No.
You'll be amazed. Do we have that picture?
Their website does have pictures on it of the places they have now. They have Kennett Square, they have two in Kennett Square, so it'll be similar to that if you go onto their website.
My question is, do we have a picture of what I saw here? That's a shame.
Michelle, do you know what you have?
We might. Let me check on that.
We certainly had something we looked at last month.
Michelle's
Could we please have that picture and pass it around to these nice people?
The short answer to your question is that we certainly have, just like we have any property, but not opportunities, we would have that with a facility such as this. But I think what Mr. Miller's highlighting too is it's all under one ownership and one responsibility. And they are to make their business, they're growing business, they're growing business. And you're not going to put something, and they make their money by having the rentals and so forth. We'll keep them in good shape. That's the answer, the short answer.
And there is a legal distinction, sir, between the other developments that are being mentioned versus this one. This is privately owned. Those other developments are government run and are truly subsidized housing.
Okay. Yes, sir. Name and address for the record, please.
Jim Payne, 150, Jim Payne, 150 Maple Leaf Lane. I have two questions. One is, it's 51 townhouses, and you clarified it's 51 apartments?
Yes.
Is it a single unit of 51 apartments?
It's 51 living units, yes. Either a townhouse.
Is it a single building, or is it clusters of
It'll be
apartments?
clusters of, I think, 4 and 6 units per building. I think we saw 4 or 6 units per building.
Okay. I'm not familiar with the pie, I just wanted to make sure I understood that it's still 51 livable, in a different
It's a
configuration.
Last question, is the EDUs in place for that? Are they secured from the 2006 agreement?
Selling my house.
Wait, please.
Excuse me.
The acoustics are very bad, can we, just one person at a time, please. Mr. Payne?
The EDUs in place for this 51
This-
townhouse apartment from 2006 agreement?
Yes, the sewer allocation has been made to the township. The purchase of the EDUs has to occur through the development. Okay?
In the back, your name, address, for the record, please.
Adrian Capuano, 1283 Del Circle. Okay, a few questions, and I really want to get some answers. I'm not being arrogant. I know a couple of you guys are giving a lot of lip service. All of us are here for a reason. I took out the time out of my busy night to come down here and address issues, and, you know, and I can see some funny faces going on. Have some respect for me. We want me to respect you. This is just, this is not cool. This is not West Virginia or Kentucky. This is a group of people that are paying a lot of taxes. And in particular, $70,000 my property value went down. So what is this going to do? It's going to help me tank some more. What other plans that are underhanded with the school district are up your sleeve? And I know you guys don't truly understand the concept. I know we should go out and see this property. What's the point of the property? Who is going to feel the property? You can do background checks. It's on insecurities. Anybody can do a background check. I'm going to tell you what you can find out. Nothing. And here you have money launderers, terrorists, and drug dealers. Okay? And while this isn't so interesting to you, this is the suburbs. It's reality. People from other places are moving into this area. You're doing nothing to help me with my property taxes. When is the completion of this property going to be? Because obviously, I'm going to have to cut my losses and go. This was a home for 9 years, and I have no confidence in any of you. And are all of you votable out? Yes. Can I vote all of you out, or is this something that I get elected into? Because I'm extremely angry.
Absolutely. I have no answer for you to any of that, so it is in the record, you've been recorded.
Of course, there's been no answers all night, so all of this is for nothing, except answers bouncing from person to person. So maybe we should respect some things.
I'm confident that we're not encouraging terrorists to move to town.
Of course, that's what you want to think, because this is the suburbs, but it's reality of day and age. I know, let's discard her. I'm a highly educated person too, and you should listen to my work. You know, I'm not some random female. I'm a taxpayer just like everyone else in here, and it's very disgraceful that this happened. Okay, 51 homes, I know it's only 51. But 300 apartments. Right, and the fact of the matter is, you don't think it's going to do anything to any of us. You know, there's a kickback, absolutely. Is it going to help my taxes stay at this rate of almost $7 grand? No, it's not. You know, is it a guarantee? Can you give me a 5-year guarantee? No. If I'm coming from other places, am I going to want to come to Pottsgrove and dine and watch a movie? No. I'll go to Collegeville. I'll go to Exton. You've done nothing to draw people here. And I'm embarrassed where I live, because as it is, people have to go through certain parts of town. But now I have this? How are you caring about me?
I'm struggling to find some answers to some of your questions, but I do have some points. One, the drive to get here goes through the borough that unfortunately the 5 of us can't really do much about outside of the Metropolitan Regional Planning Commission. Secondly, nothing certainly stops any of us right now that are property owners, that are resident property owners, from renting our properties that we own. I could certainly place my townhouse for rent tomorrow. That certainly doesn't mean that the person that's going to rent it, with all due respect, is suddenly going to be a rapist or a sexual predator, a criminal of any sort, or a terrorist.
It's very funny, I know.
No, ma'am, it's not. I'm not trying to be humorous. My house that I purchased in Coddington View in 2006, well, I purchased for $271,000. It's now worth $202,000. So the fact that our property values are down certainly has nothing to do with the fact that there's a planned development based on an agreement that was put forth 10 years ago. I can tell you that if this were in front of me today, much like the Minji property on the other side of Route 100, that his original plan was for affordable housing, and I had a choice to make, I would vote against it to be affordable housing, just like I was against the other side of the road to be affordable housing. We cannot do anything about it at this point. But I do As an individual who grew up in the borough, whose parents unfortunately struggled, and I'm fortunate to be where I am today, and I struggle with the characterization that suddenly somebody who makes 60% of what I do is magically a crook, a dope dealer, or something of the sort. So as conservative and as a Republican as I am, I still struggle with that, and I certainly don't think that suddenly we're opening the floodgates to crime to Upper Pottsgrove.
This is an ex-police chief from North Carolina. Maybe you want to hear what his perspective is, because he can definitely chime in on what crime would be, in addition to Maria.
He's shaking his head no.
May I ask the question?
Yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am. I'm going to bounce around to those who want to.
Thank you.
Ma'am, did you have something to say, ma'am? Ma'am? Yes. Yes? And your name and address for the record, please?
Hi, I'm Mrs. Ford, also in Tonsberry Farm. And as someone in my 70s, a senior citizen, we have complained about lighting. Going out at night also, that Stredner's is open 24 hours. When we turn in Tonsberry Farm, it's very dark anytime after hours. We also asked about lighting a while ago. I would like to know, if we get more development, will we get better policing? Of course, the police would need more money, but has anyone addressed that? The lighting is terrible in there. Like I said, I'm in my 70s. When I'm driving in that development, even after dark, sometimes it's scary. We have a town watch, thank God, and all of us on with our emails do recognize that someone contacts us, like the neighbors, when our cars were burglarized, or they're always reminding us to lock our cars at night. It is so dark, though, in that neighborhood. So I would be concerned, too, about that.
You have mentioned darkness and lighting in there. This is the first time I'm hearing about it in public. And I'm just saying this. I'm saying this is the first time it's been brought to my attention at this point. I don't know what the procedure or protocol would be for lighting the community. Obviously, the cost of doing so would fall on that community in some fashion. I would certainly entertain whatever process or protocol would follow that through. And I'll pass that off on whoever can give us some advice and recommendations on how to do that. Thinking off the top of my head, I don't know that if we had a community that was willing to install lighting, that we would object to that. So, but that's something that we'll save another day. Okay, anybody, sorry, you've been patient. Name and address for the record, please.
It's Stanley McElvey. I'm at 1433 North Hanover Street, and I have two reasons I'm here tonight. One is I lived here 2.5 years in this township, and I want to commend you guys for doing such a good job on the park, walking trail, the open space. My other reason is I need to get some clarification on. I'm not bringing up the dog issue, animal ordinances. I do have a problem. On the left side of my property is your township property, which is really great. When we moved in, we loved it there. The right side of me now, I have a farm. I got 2 alpacas, 2 more coming, 20 chickens, 4 roosters on 4 acres. This all happened in the last 8 months. I talked to my neighbor. I just need clarification on your animal. I know you have dog ordinances, which is great, and I know why you got that. But the animal, you don't have an animal ordinance, or do you? And I talked to the code enforcement officer about this, he told me to come here. Do you have an you don't?
Not in total. I think we talked about chickens.
You don't have animal, because I've lived in Earl Township for 40 years in a WAC area, which is a Wooded Agricultural Conservation District. I came to an R1. Jeez. I mean, I want to be a good neighbor. I can put a fence up so I don't have to look at the alpacas when I'm out in my patio. We love our property. But these roosters are driving my wife and I crazy. 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 Okay? So, do I have any recourse on a nuisance? I brought up all your ordinances. Do I have any recourse on it? Do you have a nuisance ordinance? And it's pretty hard to, I don't think you do.
No, it's just for barking dogs.
Well,
Get a cat.
I don't want to do any gun, but they are aggressive. I went over to the neighbor. He's not going to put his roosters and chickens in the house. He got pulled no permits, which, okay. I have a cattle fence up, electric fence, 20 feet from my property line with cattle feeds. Now, I got a really nice property. I have over $400,000 invested in my property. Sit on our patio. I'm watching these alpacas take a dump while I'm eating a hamburger. It's not right. It is just not fair and not right for my wife and I. And what, is there anything I can do?
How large is the property?
I think he has 40. But
I'm just getting an idea. Anything can be, we can write an ordinance about anything you want or can or allow to. And the issue is not, again, been raised before in this fashion. We'll ask the solicitor and the manager to come up with some ideas.
I urge you, I was on the zoning board of Earl Township. They have an animal ordinance, and you need a farm, you need 11 acres. You can only have one animal unit per acre. And you guys don't have anything. I really urge you to come up with that. I know he'll be grandfathered in, but for the good of the township in future, I think you should come up with
researching an animal ordinance.
They would follow the zoning, correct, Mr. President?
No, not necessarily.